Hi everyone, Josh Wasta here. Before we start the brand new graphically novel project, Rhett Conversations, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, when we were recording this, we didn't have our theme yet, which you will hear in 1 second, done by our house band Vandello, and specifically with vocals by Jared Adam, and it is awesome. Second of all, obviously, due to the nature of the show, this is going to be full spoilers. Duh. So if you don't want spoilers for the comic storyline that we are talking about, well then there you go. Don't listen. Or listen later. Read and then listen. I like that better. Thirdly, if you're looking to be a guest, if you have a comic book storyline, if any of you are interested in contacting us, retconversations@gmail.com. Well, enough of me. Let's get back to, well, me. Take it away, Vandello.
Direct conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't elating me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Rhett Conversations, our second episode. My name is Josh Wasta, aka Fallout Fieri, and we're here to explain today House of M. And here to do that with me, because I cannot do this alone, is my wonderful co-host, Leia No More Mutants Cameron.
I think of it more like the Lionel Hutz, like, no, more mutants.
And as usual, we have a guest, someone that is here that wants us to explain this crazy ass storyline. And today we have our good friend, Matt Hirth. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Josh.
So Matt, this is your first time on not just Rhett Conversations, but a graphically novel production. Yep. And when that happens, we usually ask our guests, what is your history with comic books?
Okay, well, my history with comic books is very long, almost as long as I've been able to read, which is a long time. I read Archie when I was a little kid. In the 80s and early 90s, I got really deep into mostly the Marvel stuff. Favorite growing up was Danny Ketch Ghost Rider. I will die on that hill of there being no better Ghost Rider.
Yeah, that's a not often touted run, but I am a big fan.
A big piece of it was Mark Texeira's work. He was the artist and just really good at grabbing the eye of a middle school, young high school age kid. Then in college, I got into all the DC books. I'm having a dumb moment right now. I'm blanking on the imprint, but
Vertigo.
It's all this Vertigo. Thank you, Leia.
You know what? I didn't even have to know. I could have been totally wrong, but I know you that well.
Oh, absolutely. Invisible, Sandman. All the mind-bendy stuff that came out of there. Then
Transmetropolitan, the first time that I could mention it on the news show.
Spider Jerusalem was a personal hero for some time, even though he was a very bad man. But yeah, Transmet's a favorite. Then I took a break for a while, but then the MCU happened and I started caring about comics again because damn, I love the MCU stuff. And
you're well met, my friend.
Yes. But in reading, once I got back into reading for a while, I went back to Image and was doing some of the better independent books, East versus West, Transcender, I think it was called, or Descender.
I'm not familiar with either of those.
I've
heard of East versus West.
Okay.
Or East
it's sitting on my
West?
Coffee table, literally in the other room right now. I've just never picked it up.
It's very good. Stuff like that. As a gamer, Rat Queens, obviously.
Oh God, Rat Queens is amazing.
Yes, but then as of late, once I found a lot of friends, mostly you guys, talking about Marvel, and it got me really back interested in talking and getting back into the books. So I'm reading it again. Just read through the entire Avengers Disassembled storyline and was reminded how much I've missed and so many things going on. I have no clue. But it was a starting point again.
Well, and Avengers Disassembled leads right into the storyline that we'll be doing today. So for those that are not familiar, our setup is as thus. We're going to have a professor to give the lecture on House of M. Today, that will be Miss Cameron.
Professor L, thank you.
Professor L, I love it. Since Matt is our guest, and since he is the person that is not well versed in this storyline that we are explaining it to, at any point he has the power to stop the entire lecture to ask a question. It could be, who is that? It could be, what are they talking about? It could be, what the fuck is that? You know, however really you want to react to it, but you can stop at any time and ask a question. At that point, it is the duty of the second host, in this case for this show, it would be me, to answer his question. We'll see if Leia has as many problems as I had remembering that the other person needs to answer the question. Because I was on a roll and I just wanted to keep going. So this will be a fun experiment, and please don't add us if we are constantly talking over each other. So, Professor Cameron on Professor L on the topic of House of M, the floor is yours.
All right. Okay. So, Matt, you did mention that you read Avengers Disassembled to prep for this, which I do appreciate. For the people who have not read that, I'm going to give a real brief synopsis that will basically get us to where this opens up, so that it doesn't just open up because it basically opens in media res. And, you know, it's without that little bit of background, you're not going to know what's happening. So House of M takes place after Avengers Disassembled, which is a storyline wherein, very long story short, Dr. Doom mind controls Wanda to attack the Avengers. Ant-Man, Vision, and Hawkeye are killed during this plotline. Doctor Strange puts Wanda into a coma, and Professor X and Magneto retrieve Wanda. They take her to Genosha, an island that was created to be a kind of mutant paradise, free of sapien rule, and it was destroyed shortly before the events of House of M in a Sentinel attack. It is, at the time of this plotline, what our previous president would have described as a shithole country.
Can I actually stop you for a quick question?
Yes.
I know this is pre-actual House of M. You mentioned that Doctor Doom mind controlled Wanda to attack the Avengers. That wasn't in anything I read. Was that preamble, like pre-Avengers Disassembled? Because what I got was all these horrible things happened to the Avengers, and then I got like a 5-page reveal near the very end that says, "Oh, it's Wanda," and that was the only time Wanda was in the storyline.
I think your run, Leia, may go longer when it comes to Avengers Disassembled than just the story that is in trade paperback. There are longer issues like omnibuses, and I think that's what you have access to. And that's a great question, Matt, because man, welcome to comics. You know, we're reading House of M, and by the way, the book that we used is actually out of print, but it is the collected 1 through 8 House of M. Some have an issue of the Pulse in them, which is like the Daily Bugle's "This is what the world looks like." Some don't. Some are House of M that they're huge and very, very thick. That is House of M that has all of the different House of M tie-ins in it. Sometimes you'll just run into like House of M Avengers. That's not actually the House of M storyline. That's just where these certain Avengers were in their history to lead up to the events of House of M. And so that can get confusing. And if you're new to comics, the best recommendation that I have is just look for, ask a buddy, first of all, or just look for specifically what you're looking for and check how many issues it covers.
Yeah, because I reverted right back to my completionist nature, and I went and found a checklist of every issue from Prelude, tie-in, the entirety of Disassembled, and I just went issue by issue instead of doing the trades, and thought I caught everything, but clearly I missed a really big piece, which ended up leaving me going, well, I know House of M is huge. Why was it this tiny reveal of we don't know who it is, oh, it's Wanda, the end, and it leads to this massive thing. The Doctor Doom thing, that's a pretty big deal, and that changes how I see the story.
Right, absolutely. Another good example is we talked about Civil War in our last Rec Conversation show, and there's a lot that happens just after that changes a bunch of stuff, because that's when Cap gets shot with time bullets.
Time bullets.
That's time travel, Kyle. But yeah, so there are a lot of people will take a lot of different things away from the story, but the story itself of House of M did not include that part, or not House of M. I'm sorry, the Disassembled. I think that was a just after thing. Much as I consider Steve Rogers being shot after Civil War as part of Civil War.
Gotcha. Well, that extra context definitely helps Sorry for railroading us before we get to the actual story we're talking about.
Not at all. That's your
good.
job.
That's a good question. And to be completely honest, I do not remember what plot line or what not what plot line, but what book that's revealed in. I honestly don't remember where I where I read that. Okay, so all right, so Dr. Strange puts Wanda into a coma. Professor X and Magneto take her back to Genosha, and it's in ruins now because there was a Sentinel attack. But some mutants are still living there. When House of M opens, we open on Wanda giving birth to the twins. She's surrounded by family, friends, Dr. Strange. It's beautiful. It's happy. It's the mystery of life, the miracle of birth. And this is
hang on, I gotta stop you.
Yes.
So you're saying she gave birth to her twins at the beginning of House of M,
Mm-hmm.
but what I remember from Disassembled, she went mad partially because of her kids.
Yep.
Yes, this is correct.
Can you clarify this for me?
Yes, I am going to. Let me finish my sentence, and it will.
I'm so
sense.
sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So she's surrounded by friends, family, Doctor Strange, and then is rudely awoken by Professor X, who intercedes, commanding her to put them back. With this, we kind of pull back, and we see that Wanda is now returning to reality once again. And she is absolutely devastated by all of the losses she's caused, the people that have died because of the things that she's done, and she's still extremely unstable. So Professor X makes her go back to sleep via telepathy. So she's out. So basically, she's just reliving this over and over again, and she's not well. That's how that happens. So hopefully that clarified.
Okay, so the birth scene opening it was actually her reliving what had driven her mad in the first place.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
That makes sense, actually.
So after all this, Professor X and Magneto are talking to each other, and Magneto wants to know if Xavier can fix her, but he can't. Wanda's just too strong. And Magneto kind of has this introspective moment where he blames himself for the way that he raised or didn't raise or influenced his children. In the meantime, after this brief conversation is had, Professor X calls a meeting of the X-Men and the Avengers at the tower, at Avengers Tower, to decide what should be done with Wanda.
Hang on.
Yes.
So there are Avengers again because at the end of Disassembled, again, the Avengers disbanded supposedly for good and all went their separate ways.
This is true. Yes.
And that is actually a question that we are brought in to the show, to the comic, because the people talking about it are Wonder Man, Ms. Marvel, and Falcon are outside the new Avengers, basically saying, "Okay, they called everybody here. What's up?"
Okay, so it opens with the Avengers don't necessarily exist at this point
because most of them quit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry. Going forward, when I say the Avengers, I mean people who were former Avengers for
Awesome.
the most part.
That helps a lot.
That was my bad in wording that, but yes, that's what I meant by that.
I will hear that going forward, and you don't need to make all those words happen.
The superheroes formerly known as the Avengers.
Yes. So they meet up at Avengers Tower, and they're trying to decide what should be done with Wanda. She's obviously very dangerous. She's unstable. She keeps fucking with things. Nobody's having a good time. Emma Frost, ray of sunshine that she is, concludes almost immediately that Wanda has to die, and Wolverine agrees. Stephen Grant Rogers, too pure for this world, wants to give her a second chance and seek alternatives. Even Dr.
Very in line, very, very much in line with Stephen Rogers.
And Emma Frost
absolutely.
wanting to kill someone outright is also very much in line with Emma Frost.
Yeah, I feel like in the comic they talk for approximately 30 seconds, and Emma Frost is just like, kill the bitch.
That tracks.
I love me some Emma Frost, and Jen hates her some Emma Frost. Which I didn't mention that auditing this course today is the lovely Baronessa Jennifer Howland.
Right. Sorry for sneezing.
Sorry for
I was
party
trying
rocking.
to be so quiet.
Never be sorry for party rocking. I got 2 drinks in front of me, and I got a little thing of Fireball in case things get dicey. So.
Okay. Anyways, Mr. 405.
Dolly.
So and even Doctor Strange says he can't help her. There's nothing he can do. So there's also a secondary concern from the X-Men who are concerned that what Wanda's doing can really fuck them over in terms of like human mutant relations, which is valid. They eventually decide to go and talk to her and see where her head's at before making a decision. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Quicksilver shows up in Genosha, finds out that there's been talk of killing Wanda, and understandably is pretty pissed off about that. Magneto's also pissed, but like for a different reason. He's mostly sad and he doesn't know what to do. But Pietro is just outraged that this could even be a consideration.
Do you mind? I just have to interject one thing, and it's a minor thing, but I loved it. Pietro was actually at the Avengers meeting and just ran to Genosha.
Yes.
Like they start talking about killing Wanda, and he leaves, but runs to Genosha and is there in like a minute.
Right.
Like he does.
Barry Allen ain't got nothing on this motherfucker.
He's Quicksilver. He runs as fast as the comic writers need him to.
Absolutely. Yep.
Pretty much. So he dips. He shows up in Genosha and is yelling at Magneto. In the meantime, Professor X rounds up both the pro and anti-killing Wanda groups and takes them to Genosha. By the time he arrives, Wanda's gone. And then all of a sudden, there's a bright flash of white. And then everybody wakes up. When they wake up, things are fucking weird.
Yep.
So here are some things, and this is not a comprehensive list, but a brief overview of some interesting things that have taken place after this flash of white. The first and most important thing is that Magneto and his family, which is Wanda, Pietro, and Lorna, are a ruling family of mutants known as the House of Magnus.
Sure, why not?
Genosha has been completely restored. Cyclops is married to Emma Frost.
Okay.
Peter Parker is a celebrity. He is married to Gwen Stacy and not Mary Jane, and they have a child.
Is he still Spider-Man?
What's that?
Yes.
Is he
and
still
Uncle
Spider-Man?
Ben, yes, and
Yes.
Uncle Ben is also alive. And he, in order to, this is a subsidy, like one of the Spider-Man comic, basically, of the House of M, which gives more background. He's a celebrity. He's believed to be a mutant because most celebrities in this world are mutants. And people pretending to be mutants and not being mutants are treated very poorly. And his Uncle Ben is still alive, running kind of his entertainment empire. But in order to punish him, he has hired J. Jonah Jameson to be his publicist.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It is good stuff. See what else. Carol Danvers is now Captain Marvel and not Ms. Marvel. Steve Rogers was never frozen, and he is just like a 100-year-old man who's just kicking it, just living his life. Doctor Strange is now a psychologist.
Like no magic powers psychologist?
Right.
Okay.
And and Wolverine wakes up next to Mystique in a helicarrier. He realizes very quickly that he is in a relationship with Mystique. And he's also head of the House of Magnus's Red Guard, and he remembers everything.
And he reports directly to Stephen Shaw.
Yes.
As in, we're talking Hellfire Club. Wait,
Black
Stephen
King.
Shaw or Sebastian Shaw?
Sorry, Sebastian Shaw.
Okay, so Hellfire Club leader is over Wolverine in the Royal Guard of the House of Magnus, is what you're saying.
Yes.
But Logan knows that all of this is wrong.
Yes. He wakes up and he's
Correct.
like, what the hell is going on?
Okay.
So Wolverine, understandably confused at the fact that he can remember two very, very different lives, and also understandably confused at the fact that he can remember any of this because he's been mind wiped so many times. He doesn't quite understand what's going on, and as a result, just yeets himself out of the helicarrier, which is a perfectly normal reaction to that, I suppose.
Sure.
Because he wants to go get some fresh air. I am not making this up. This is a thing that actually happened.
Yep. Instead of the Captain America from Civil War jumps out of a helicarrier and lands on a jet, this is just Wolverine going, well, I'll survive it.
Just jumps off. And it's
Yep.
kind of hilarious, even in the comic. I mean, I remember when I was rereading it, I was like, I forgot this happened, and I was just laughing because it's just, I mean, who among us wouldn't do the same, right?
Right. So he lands like a comet in New York City.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I'll just add, because it was my favorite little panel, is Colossus in full, like, mutanted up armor is in a Russian field. You just see him,
Yes.
and he's tilling the fields, and boom, there's no more of Colossus. Just Colossus is in a field.
Like
in
that's
Russia.
the only scene.
Yeah. Like he's
Okay.
just, I'm back on my family's farm. Joo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Which also really tickled Jen because she like read it. She looked at me. She's like, "That's it." I'm like, "That's actually his perfect life. Like, that's what he wants."
All right, so he eats himself out of the helicopter, lands in New York City like a comet, and starts to learn a little bit about this weird new world he's woken up in. In this new world, mutants are the dominant species, and House of Magnus lords over them all. He's understandably bewildered, and his first course of action is to try and find Professor X. So he goes to Xavier Institute in the middle of the night and terrorizes
Wolverine's
a family.
got a Wolverine.
Yeah. just busts in and essentially terrorizes a family who's living in this mansion, who's like, "We don't know what you're talking about. We've lived here for 15 years. Please just, our money's in the safe. Please don't hurt us."
So once again, Wolverine's got a Wolverine.
And so that he's like, "Well, fuck it, I'm gonna go to Stark Tower." Goes to Stark Tower, but that's when his teammates from the Red Guard show up and try to kick his ass.
Is there anybody else in the Red Guard I should know about / recognize besides Mystique and Sebastian Shaw?
Yes. Hold on one moment. I know Nightcrawler, Rogue, and I'm trying to remember the rest. Hold on one second. I gotta flip to it. So yes, Mystique, Nightcrawler, Rogue, Toad, and Jessica Drew.
Jessica Drew.
Spider-Woman.
Spider-Woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That is the Red Guard.
That makes total sense.
I mean, it's Mystique and her two kids.
Oh no, the Mystique and Rogue and Nightcrawler makes absolute sense.
Toad is kind of just funny because Toad is always funny.
It's the Jessica Drew that got me. That's just weird.
She comes up later.
Okay.
So all right. So Red Guard shows up. They try to kick his ass. He escapes because he's Wolverine. And just out of absolutely fucking nowhere, Cloak shows up and does his thing and poofs him into a basement with Luke Cage and a bunch of other folks. Turns out that Luke Cage is leading the Human Resistance Movement. One of the people he's with several folks, several different heroes and former mutants, and one of the people that's there is Hawkeye, who's pissed because that's Clint,
and also alive.
Yes.
Yes.
This will be important later.
Okay.
So he's there. Of course, Wolverine is confused by that as well, and he threatens Logan, which then leads to him. And I couldn't believe this. He shoots him in the neck with an arrow, which seems pretty harsh at first, but it's really just to destroy a tracker in Wolverine's neck. But
keep in mind, though, he knows nothing about Wolverine or his powers when he does it.
Right, exactly. He just shoots this guy in the neck. And Wolverine's fine. But it's too late because the Red Guard have tracked him with the tracker. They show up and they attempt to kick his ass again. And then Cloak poofs them over to the Kingpin's office because he knew it would be empty.
Point of order. The Red Guard do not show up. Sentinels show up. To which they say, right. Sapien targets identified.
You are right. I mistyped that in my notes. You are absolutely right.
Neat. So the mutants control the Sentinels.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So then they're sitting in the Kingpin's office and Wolverine's like, "I'm going to tell you what's going on, but I assure you, you will not believe me." And they're like, "No, go ahead and tell us." And he lays it all out for them. And he's like, we're not, this is a false reality. There's something wrong. And of course, everybody's like, you're nuts, dude. And in his introspective sort of monologue, he determines that it must be Magneto who's behind all this, who used both Wanda and Professor X to warp reality and give everybody their deepest desires. And he kind of extrapolates that since Magneto's wish is to, be the leader of the mutants and to see Sapiens subjugated and have mutants rule. Wolverine's deepest desire has always been to remember his whole life after all the mind wipes that he's been through. So this conclusion does make a lot of sense. Out of really nowhere.
Well, it's Cage that brings her up, but yeah.
It is Cage that brings her up.
My mutant power is Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. It's very abrupt in the comics and it's kind of given zero explanation, but here it is. There's a young girl that he brings in called Layla Miller, and she has essentially a power that, for all intents and purposes, awakens people to disturbances in their reality. So basically, she can grant people the ability to realize that, oh my God, all my memories of my former life are back.
So randomly created new character without which none of this can move forward because nobody will actually know what's going on.
Absolutely, because Marvel.
Yes. Because comic.
No, and Layla Miller is, I mean, she's a character moving forward, but she's kind of a joke in amongst a lot of dedicated comic book readers, because she was literally created to be a Deus Ex Machina to move the plot forward. And then after this storyline, they're like, what the fuck do we do with Layla Miller? Like, and she keeps showing up.
I feel like she develop like completely new superpowers that have nothing to do with this. I feel like
that's her quote unquote secondary mutation, because quote unquote her first mutation has been used up.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's weird.
Yeah.
Random question before you move forward. You mentioned Cloak a couple times. Is Dagger anywhere to be seen in all of this?
No.
That was also a question that we had when we did this for Graphically Novel. We're like, how the fuck do you have Cloak and no Dagger? And there's not even a mention of Dagger.
No, it's like Dagger isn't even like drawn in the background kicking it somewhere. Like,
that's not cool.
Right. So for this, and I'll get into it when we're done with the synopsis, I read one of the House of M series trades that I had not read before, and it was the Avengers one. So I'll get into a little bit of that later. It's fucked up.
Okay.
Okay, so they've got this Deus Ex Machina named Layla Miller. She starts essentially using her power and waking people up to their true lives and their memories. Cloak takes them to Emma Frost's house, and she continues to do her thing there, awakening Emma Frost and other various superheroes, including Rogue, who accidentally touches her. And
wait. Rogue's in the Red Guard, right?
Correct.
So what's she doing at Emma Frost's house?
Red Guard breaks in. Okay, so the events go thus. Wake up Emma Frost. Emma Frost like looks right at Wolverine and goes, "Logan, are you fucking kidding me?" And she's just like, for a while, she just keeps saying, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him so good. Because everyone automatically assumes Magneto.
Well, yeah. Why not?
Cyclops comes home because they're married, and he gets the whammy put on him. He almost pukes, and
he's been sleeping with Emma Frost.
Well, Emma goes over and just yells, "Why are we married?" And then the Red Guard breaks in. And big fight ensues. Rogue decides, oh, there's just a little girl. I'm just going to put my powers on her and whammy her. And she absorbs her power, which wakens her.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So the Emma Frost and Cyclops being married, this is years before they actually delved into that relationship, right?
It sure is.
Well, that's neat.
So this is something we discussed a little bit in Graphically Novel. I want to go into more detail on it here, but I'm going to stick a pin in it until we get to the end, because we're fully spoiling in this episode. But yes, this is definitely on my notes for something that we gonna get into.
Cool. I will hold on that then.
All right. So one of the people that they awaken is Hawkeye, who now learns that he died and then was resurrected.
Who resurrected him? Wanda. Wanda resurrected him for this. Okay.
Yeah, and he's really having a tough time with that knowledge, and he kind of dips, like he just leaves. They debate over whether or not they want to do this to Steve, to Captain America, and then they determine that he is just super old and can't be useful.
It is important, though, and I'm sure for a comic that I have not read or a side thing, as everyone else is walking away, Layla's eyes flash the green of awakening. So I think she actually awakened Steve.
I didn't catch that, but
walking away.
You know what? I'm here for that.
I am too, and I want to see 100-year-old Cap being like, "Oh hell no."
Yeah, I think that I'll have to go back and look at that again, because you're most likely right, and if so, that would be cool. And I don't remember that ever
It doesn't come to
coming into
fruition
play,
anywhere later. Yeah, no,
but
not in the main story.
yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, but I just thought that was funny because they're like, no, he's just way too old. Let's leave him be.
Yeah, this is in the middle, by the way, of a Muppet movie style road trip where they're just going around New York waking motherfuckers up.
Yeah, they're like, everybody pulls out their respective Rolodexes and starts making house calls.
Well, they're using the phone book primarily, which is great because that's such
Yes.
a 2006 fucking thing to do.
It really is. They like literally use the yellow pages, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess we didn't have smartphones then. We did have the internet, but all right.
So did the entire Red Guard get woken up at that point, or just Rogue?
All of them.
Okay.
You never really see Toad again, but I can't imagine that Toad would be like, okay, well, thanks for that, bounce.
So eventually they decide that they're gonna they got to go to Genosha, and I always want to pronounce Genosha like Kenosha, and I could be wrong. That's just the Midwest in me. So they go back to Genosha, and on the way, Jessica Drew's like, hey guys, what if we just stayed here where we're super happy? Like, what is the problem with this? And a couple people are like, oh shit. But
my favorite is Wolverine going, you're going to feel really dumb that you said that.
Wolverine is having none of this and is like, fuck nah. Meanwhile, back in Genosha, the House of Magnus is holding a gala for all kinds of dignitaries, foreign and otherwise. T'Challa's there, Aurora is there, Namor's there, Doom is there, Genevieve of the Kree is there, etc. So they're having a big gala, and it kind of reminded me of like a red carpet kind of like an Oscars party kind of, like there's paparazzi and red carpet and all that, and then a Sentinel attacks.
The Sentinels who are only supposed to be attacking the humans attacks this thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Magneto uses his powers to hold it off, which is when everybody decides to make their move. And they had discussed in the helicarrier on the way there. They're like, hey, don't hold back. Give them everything you've got. Do not pull your punches. We have to win in order to restore reality. Some highlights of that. Rogue steals both Namor and Storm's powers and goes just cuckoo bananas. And Cyclops seemingly fucking vaporizes the piss out of Magneto.
Good for him.
While this battle is going on, Cloak takes both Emma and Layla over to Magneto's. He's got like a little garden, and in the middle of it is a memorial stone for Xavier, who it says, he died so that Genosha could live. At this point, Emma just kind of breaks down and is like, "It's over, man. It's over, man." But Cloak checks and is like, "Hey, his bones aren't there, so there's nobody underneath this supposed grave." And then, meanwhile, after that. Doctor Strange has a sit-down chit-chat with Wanda about what the fuck is happening. In this, we learn that the person that planted the idea of this was not, in fact, Magneto. It was Quicksilver. During the earlier conflict, when Quicksilver came to visit Magneto and Wanda and was like, "How could you let them do this? Don't let them kill her." Blah 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 blah. He's the one who put the idea into her head that says, "Hey, maybe if we give everybody exactly what they want, they won't kill you." And just so Emma asks Doctor Strange to ask about where the hell is Professor X.
Is this psychiatrist Doctor Strange, or has he been woken up at this point too?
He has also been woken up at this point.
Okay.
And it's like, hey, ask him what the hell happened to Professor X. But before he can do that, Wanda is shot with an arrow. Surprise, it's Hawkeye.
Hey.
Like in the back of the neck, full execution style.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, she killed him. I get it.
And he's really having a tough time. And then after this heated exchange, where he basically breaks down to Wanda about how he was dead and now he's not dead, and this is really fucking with him. He's killed again by one of Wanda's twins, who basically just like vaporizes him. So Hawkeye
screams at him until he screams at him until he disintegrates.
Yeah. and that's the second death of Hawkeye. And then in the garden, meanwhile, Magneto, Emma Frost, and Layla Miller are all talking about what everything has happened. And he finds out that Quicksilver is the one who put the idea into Wanda's head. His response to this is to nearly kill him by just beating the absolute piss out of him with big pieces of metal. And Scarlet Witch shows up again and is like, hey, this is ridiculous. And then we've got the famous, we're freaks, we're mutants. You chose this over us and you ruined us. Daddy, no more mutants. Everything goes white again. When everybody wakes back up after the second flash of white, everything is back to the way it was. There's a lot of scenes of confusion as people, Peter wakes back up next to Mary Jane. Some people remember, some people don't remember what happened to them.
Anyone touched by Layla remembers.
Right. If they were not in direct contact with her, they don't remember.
Okay.
Peter's not having a great time, by the way.
He's really not nobody is really having a good time, but Peter is definitely not having a good time.
Is this specifically because he was with Gwen and now he remembers that she died in his arms?
It wasn't even necessarily that. Like, it's the whole, he remembered that she died in his arms back when he was awoken. And there's a whole he has a real hard time with it because for him, this is the life he always wanted. Like, this is Peter just saying, if you were to say what would be your perfect life, and this is while he's married to Mary Jane, mind you, he's like, I would be with Gwen, we would have a kid, and we would hang out every day with Uncle Ben and Aunt May. And that is what he's doing. Like, and he's a celebrity. Like, basically he became a celebrity starting with that first wrestling match.
Okay.
And then it projected from there. So basically he's the Rock of, House of M. So he loved his life, but then he wakes up and it's not necessarily that it's unfair. He wrestles with it because he's like, okay, I can identify that was my perfect life, but I can also identify that in this life I'm married to a woman that I love.
Right.
But what does that say about me? It kind of causes this whole existential crisis of, if this is what I really wanted and this is what I've settled for, I mean, I'm happy with what I've settled for, right?
But
So
yeah, it's rough. It's very rough. So the mutants start waking up and realizing that a ton of them have lost their powers. The X Mansion is in absolute chaos because nobody can do anything anymore. Iceman is like sweaty. It's a great panel.
Where he says, "Is it just hot in? Is it hot in here? Is it just me?"
Yeah. God bless Bobby Drake. Emma uses Cerebro to scan the world for mutant activity, and there's nothing. And so they're trying to figure out what the hell happened. And then back at Stark Tower, and
before that too, Wolverine sits up and just says, "I remember." That's the only panel that you get of Wolverine. So he has his whole life.
Wow.
Yeah, all of his mind wipes, things like that. They're
reset.
Unlocked.
Yeah.
So, but there are no mutants at this point,
right?
Okay.
There are some.
Well, there are some, but for the most part, and I can't remember the exact. There were 16 million mutants, I think, at the beginning of this.
Well, in this, they say there could have been hundreds of thousands, if not a million, mutants at this point. There are 198 by the point that by the aftermath of this, they identify there are 198 mutants on Earth.
This may not be part of House of M, but do they ever explain why those 198 kept their powers?
No, it was random. Because Iceman's depowered, Blob's depowered, and it splits pretty evenly between villain mutants and regular mutants, and superhero mutants.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a news report while they're in the Stark Tower or the Avengers Tower, and it's Hawkeye's uniform, and it looks like it's set up almost like a crucifixion scene. It's very weird.
It's being held up by the two arms with arrows.
Yeah.
And next to it is another arrow that just has the newspaper article about when he died.
Yeah, and so that happens.
Is that like a hint that he's still alive since it's stuck up with arrows, or is it
Yes.
what?
Yes.
Okay. Will we find out how he came back a third time?
Not
Yes.
in this arc.
Not in
That's
this
fine.
one, but yes.
That's fine. I because Marvel, like
Yes.
sometimes people come back and we don't know why. I would like to know why he got to die twice and still come back only to go deaf and be in one of the best comic books ever. But you know,
It does definitely affect him in a negative way. I can
Yeah.
definitely say.
And it does. So Matt Fraction's run of Hawkeye, he pulled so much stuff from Clint, and from what I remember the last time I read it, this very much was a turning point for Clint. So that is discussed or addressed in the Fraction run.
just for my own timeline in my head, when does Ronin happen? How many years later is that? I could have looked that up myself. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No,
let me Google that for you.
That's
that's
why
all right.
that's why we're here.
Yep.
That is a good question, and I am blanking suddenly. I want to say it wasn't too terribly long after this, but
2007, so 2 years.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
so Ronin being Ronin is probably tied to Clint being messed up from this.
Well, keep in mind this happens, and a year later, Civil War happens.
Okay, yeah, that'll mess a guy up.
Yeah.
He's had a tough time.
He has.
So the conclusion of this is that they go the X-Men are trying to figure out what in the absolute hell is happening, so they decide that they got to return to Genosha again, and they're going to confront Magneto. When they get there, they find out that he also doesn't have his powers anymore, and he really just he's nobody. He's nothing anymore. He's got nothing. So Wolverine decides that the best possible punishment for Magneto is to keep him alive, let him age normally, have no power, and just kind of condemn him to being old and dying.
Does that tie into any of the Joseph stuff that happened, or am I off on timeline on that?
No, Joseph was earlier. Joseph was in the 90s.
Yeah, that's again my timeline is so skewed right now.
Right.
So at the conclusion of this, they really don't know how this could have happened. Wanda is not showing up on Cerebro. Xavier's still missing. And at the end, Hank Pym talks about how the powers, all of this energy that's in the powers, can't simply vanish. It has to exist somewhere. So for every action, of course, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So what will be the reaction? And as the arc closes out, and he kind of pulls back to show that there is a huge, like, red energy field that's kind of starting to surround the Earth, and that is where House of M ends.
I took that as Phoenix Force.
So I read this originally ages ago and only reread it recently, and I assumed that it was Wanda's magic because I am far more versed in the MCU these days. But
Right.
I could be incorrect. That's what I interpreted that as meaning.
So that's House of M.
Yeah, that's it. That's House of M.
Did any of the deaths that happened in House of M take?
No.
Or so this really was just a big, other than mutants losing their powers, Patrick, we cut to Patrick Duffy in the shower. He has not been killed, et cetera, et cetera. It was just all but one big dream.
Well, some people, so there are some comic storylines that do tie into this and do give explanations as to how some of the deceased characters aren't actually dead. Like I know that in terms of, because one of the people that was killed way back was Ant-Man, and I know that it turns out that the Cassie Lang ended up and the Young Avengers ended up saving him and transporting him to safety. So that's one.
Wait, so
Hawkeye.
So Ant-Man is not dead
No,
either?
he is not.
Okay. That all right.
Although he didn't show up anywhere in House of M.
Yeah, he was not present in House of M. It was like this. He was
Right.
sure not appearing in this film.
And neither was Vision. which is actually kind of important because Wanda and Vision were married when she killed him in Avengers Disassembled, and he does not show up anywhere in this.
Yes, which I thought was really interesting. I was kind of, as I was reading, I was like, of all the things, everybody's getting their fondest wishes and whatever, and she didn't choose to bring him back. That's weird.
So who was the father of her kids?
They don't say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any of the other deaths from Disassembled undone when everybody wakes up?
Oh gosh, I know there's one more, and I'm totally blanking on who the hell it was.
Is Thor back?
No, Thor was nowhere in.
Yeah,
House
Thor was
of
not
M.
present. Ant-Man, Vision, and Hawkeye. Yeah, and so that's all I've got in my notes is Ant-Man, Vision, and Hawkeye. Okay. Hawkeye comes back later. In Hawkeye, in his infractions run, where he's having a tough time.
So
when it's not having a tough time.
There's a small bit of what I will just call a running gag, running segment in this show called "Where is Gambit?" House of M. If you look at the main cover, there is Wolverine, and directly behind him,
oh yeah, there he is,
the most prominent person on this cover, other than Wolverine, and I guess Beast, if you really look closely, is Gambit. Now, Gambit's in like 2 scenes. He's a thief. He gets busted by Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, that's it. That's literally. I think he was in there for maybe 3 panels where he was, Ms. Marvel's like, "Stop, criminal," and then he's like, "No," and then it's.
So he was a pretty face used to sell the book.
Well, also Bendis hates Gambit, so and Bendis, was Bendis's baby to really reintroduce the large cross comics event. It hadn't been done, I think, since Secret War. The 90s, they generally kept it to Spider-Man had 4 different comics, so you would run all of your stuff over 4 Spider-Man comics. Same with X-Men, but it wasn't really all of the Marvel universe.
Right, and even Disassembled only ran through like 4 or 5 different books, I think.
Right. So, this was a money grab. But
it was fairly short, but it does affect and inform so many plot lines that came after it. Like that's the one thing that I find really interesting about this, because I forgot that this is it's only 8 issues.
Right.
It's not very long, but there's a lot going on and a lot comes out of it.
So before we get to pins stuck in things, Matt, do you have any questions on what we have described thus far?
I'm trying to think. I feel like I asked most questions I would have. I don't. I think we're covered, honestly.
So the thing that I wanted to bring up and talk about, and I believe that Jen may want to pipe up in this part, and I know Leia will, is how women are treated in this comic with everyone's perfect life.
Yeah. So the thing that both Josh and I noticed upon this reread is that all the guys kind of get their preferred bang partner, and the women are just sort of props for this. There's not a lot of women who are getting like their deepest, wishes or desires or whatever. It's basically the guys are married to who they really want to be married to. And the girls are just kind of there.
Which is pointed out twice. It's pointed out once when Emma Frost says, "Why are we married?" And the second time when Mystique is woken up, she slaps the shit out of Logan.
Yes.
Hurts herself.
And hurts herself because he has adamantium skeleton.
Right.
So I don't remember any time in my reading of Wolverine having a thing for Mystique. Did I miss all that somewhere?
So there's a conversation that we missed because it isn't really important to the main storyline. But so they wake up Peter, and Peter has a real fucking problem because Peter, when they wake him up, is with Gwen, his kid, Aunt May, and Uncle Ben. And Peter runs away. Is like, what the fuck is this? And runs up a building. Emma Frost very quickly, because Gwen is freaking out, going, "Why did my husband run away? What did you do?" Mind whammies all of them and just basically says, "Go to the park and play." And they're like, "Okay, we will go to the park and play." And all of the people that are awoken at that point look at each other and say, "Who wants to go talk to Pete?" And Wolverine, of all people, goes, I'll do it. So he goes and they have a heart-to-heart, kind of on top of a building to discuss where they are at mentally. And that's when they... Wolverine says, well, I think everyone got the life that Wanda gave everyone the life that they wanted. And Pete goes, oh yeah, what was yours? And Wolverine's response is, I guess I always wanted to be Nick Fury.
Okay.
To which Pete goes, oh, I'm sorry.
It's also implied too, and Josh, you can agree with me or disagree as you see fit, but I feel like it was implied that part of the reason that Logan is banging Mystique is because she can look like whoever he would like.
Oh,
yes.
That's the trick.
And Jen, would you like to?
Worse.
It's awful. It's awful.
Because in the first scene, when he wakes up in this alternate reality, it looks like he's with Jean.
Yep.
It's a redhead.
Right.
And then switches to...
Right. And he's freaking out, being like, this is not my life. And she's like, listen, I didn't mean to wake you up like this, but it's your redhead fetish.
So, but didn't you say before that they had not discussed Scott's infatuation with Emma Frost yet?
I don't believe so, because that's really done. Okay, so now we're going to get into Whedon's run of X-Men is just after, is in 2004. So no, that makes sense.
Okay,
Because he and Emma Frost have been together in the comics for a while, because they've already done the storyline where Scott was psychically cheating with Emma.
I was reading the books at that point.
Yeah. 2004 was the Astonishing X-Men run. So Jean's dead. Scott is with Emma.
Okay, so it actually makes sense that he would be with Emma at this point in his perfect world.
I believe so, unless something happened. No, because the first run ran from... Man, I'm wondering if this is the Ellis run. No, Whedon's run is still going on. So yes, they are together.
Okay, that clears that up then.
Yep.
So literally every dude got their preferred bang and the women got the shaft.
Right. Because Warren Ellis's run on Astonishing X-Men didn't start until 2008.
Yeah, sadly that makes sense for comics.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah, it was very clearly written by a dude in that aspect. Like, it was just like, all the guys get, whatever their preferred mega hottie is, and that's their life now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would say that for me, we're at the point of the show where we kind of talk about our unbridled opinion of this run. House of M to me has for a long time kind of been comfort food almost. Like, if I want to just sit down and read something beginning to end, usually it's digital, but I really like the House of M stuff. I've started to really expand. I remember reading the Spider-Man stuff for it because it was super interesting to me and I was totally into Spider-Man. But yeah, like I was saying before, in this world, Spider-Man is accepted as a mutant and is like The Rock and is hugely popular. But in his specific House of M run that happens just before House of M starts, it's starting to become exposed that he is not a mutant, which would basically spell disaster for his brand.
Right.
I like the things that they did with it. I did read the Avengers run. So the Avengers run is basically what happened to Luke Cage and how he started this resistance that shows up. And he grew up, again, in Hell's Kitchen, but he grew up, Diamondback is a mutant. And so he grew up with a mutant best friend until there's a woman that they both like. And then Diamondback frames him. I believe that's the same story as regular Luke Cage. In prison, he's just going to be there until the part that they never talk about in the actual continuity is how Magnus rose to power. There was a mutant human war, just called the Mutant War. Magneto very much wins it very, very quickly. But in the small time while the war is going on, the people in Seagate Prison go, if you volunteer for this procedure, basically trying to make more super soldiers, we will commute your sentence, as long as you serve a certain amount of time in the war. Well, he goes through all of that, breaks out of prison, and then the war's over. Magnus has already won. So he goes back to Hell's Kitchen, which is called Sapien Town. So basically, Hell's Kitchen is where all the humans are put. Because Magneto has also identified Transformer mutants. So people like, a good example is Sage from the X-Men, who can basically jumpstart your X gene. So he finds a bunch of those and sends them out. So there are millions of mutants in House of M, because Magneto is honestly going through and saying, oh, if you have the X gene, we will just jumpstart you.
He's just making mutants.
Yes, and you will be the ruling class.
Okay. Tiny side note: you kept mentioning You mentioned Diamondback. I forgot there's two completely different Diamondbacks in the Marvel universe.
Yes, this is the Luke Cage.
Yeah, like you're saying it because I just read Disassembled and the Captain America story in that.
Right.
I'm thinking of her, and you're talking about the other one. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Luke Cage, Cage villain.
Right.
That for everything in every time has always been human, but for some reason in this House of M thing got turned to be to be a mutant.
Maybe that was his greatest wish.
Well, no, it was Luke's greatest wish, because Luke also then breaks out of prison, is assumed dead, shows up, beats the ever-loving hell out of Diamondback. It's questioned on whether or not he kills him. It doesn't really say, but then takes over his gang and runs his gang out of the back of Josie's. And then eventually hires Hawkeye, Iron Fist, and Moon Knight. He hires Prowler to make them gadgets. Mockingbird starts dating Clint, and they become a thing.
Wait, is this all House of M stuff?
Yes, this is. There's an entire several separate books, but this is all House of M. It's called House of M Avengers, and it's kind of an almost what if. It goes through, like, Frank Castle is discussed in it, Misty is in it, Shang Li is in it. I mean, if you like the street level shit in Marvel and you like House of M, this is the book to get.
Okay, well, I'm going to be reading all of them. So I took my read of Disassembled, and I'm parlaying it into. I'm just going to read everything that came after it in order. It's going to take a long ass time, but I'll catch up eventually.
So other than what we discovered about the treatment of women in this, which is A, very Bendis, and B, very 2006. Yeah. Unfortunately.
It was very much, I mean, it's not like this was tremendously long ago, but it was still, I think, in some ways a distinct product of its time.
Yes.
You know, when it comes to especially comics.
So Leia, where does this fall in your comics?
I actually really enjoyed this storyline because, like I said, in terms of the things that come out of it and the things that come after, a lot of interesting stuff takes place. So it's a really great. I feel like it's the great start of a story, rather than its own. I mean, I know it's its own arc, but I mean, you get what I'm trying to say. Like it's right. A jumping off point for a lot of stuff. So that being said, I really enjoyed the reread and picked up on a lot of stuff that I definitely didn't pick up on the first time around. And or now with the passage of time, I was able to kind of be like, oh, well, that's where that came from, you know, or that's how that started, you know, and so it's a nice little trip down memory lane.
I will say I totally didn't remember that this was only a year out from Civil War.
Neither did I, yeah.
But the fact that there's only 198 mutants makes sense, because then the federal government makes basically Xavier's mansion the mutant reservation. Yeah. And that actually ties pretty well into Civil War, as we discussed in our last show. So yeah, because if there were millions of mutants, you can't put them on a reservation or keep them under the lock and key that they did. So it does really tie in to Civil War. And then, you know, Civil War ties into Secret Invasion, which ties into you know, things that we will be discussing, I'm sure, eventually on this show. So Matt, grade us. How do you think we did? Do you feel you have a pretty good understanding of House of M?
I think I do. I think I'd give you an A. I'm definitely coming at it from having a decent idea of who's who and the different players. So you cleared a lot of stuff up for me. I think if I wanted to skip it, I could at this point and be comfortable reading forward. But you more made me want to go and read it myself to catch all this stuff.
Well, that's also kind of the point, you know, like we want to give you an overview, but we want to make it accessible because it could be a lot. Hashtag a lot.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're coming into it new. You know, with Graphically Novel, we do, oh, okay, you like WandaVision. This is House of M. And House of M is pretty accessible because you can start from this point and then go, okay, well, this is all their deepest, darkest desires. Where do I go from here? Well, you just keep reading.
Right.
Because you'll see where things fall.
Right.
You know, after this. And that's the point of that show. This show is, okay, cool. Have you been curious about this? Well, then we're just going to lay it all out, spoilers and all. I mean, there are still details that we didn't go over, and there's a lot of back and forth, and we didn't get into the minutia. But if you're interested at this point, either you can keep reading at this point, or, as you said, you can go back and find all of the different, your favorite heroes. You know, there is in this world, the Fantastic Four never show up, but there's a Fantastic Four Iron Man series.
Yes.
There is an entire mini series for this dedicated to the mutant war and how Magneto rose to power.
Oh.
So if you like this world, if you like this storyline, there is plenty more to read on it. Mm-hmm. And eventually we will also be covering later this season Secret Wars, which was also a huge
the original or the
newest one.
Okay.
That had a Civil War world.
Okay.
So, or not Civil War, I'm sorry, House of M world.
Oh.
It also had a Civil War world, but basically every one of these is represented back there. So when we eventually get to Secret Wars, we will have to discuss, you know, these sections are these realities. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a fun one. I hope I'm not the lecturer for that one. I think I am though, because I think I'm the even or the odd ones. So,
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're odds and I'm evens.
That's all right. Professor L will get Civil War 2. But Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good time.
This is a blast. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I can say my first podcast experience was a good one.
Good,
absolutely.
I'm so glad.
And you're always welcome. We've got a couple of Graphically Novel openings that I posted the other day. So if any of those are of interest, by all means,
I'll take a look. And if not, hopefully that has more to come, and this does too. And I'll try to get back at some point.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
All right. Well, this has been Rhett Conversations. Please tune in next week when we start our Spider-Man block.
I am so sorry for that.
We're doing 3 of the most confusing and hated Spider-Man stories, and we're starting
of all time.
Yes. Say it with me. Of all time. Thank you, Simon from What Culture. But Jules. Oh my God, you're right, Jules. But we are starting with the 90s Clone Saga. Oh my God. It's going to hurt so bad. And I have to be Professor J for that one.
Yes, you do.
So anyway, until then, please tune in and have a great time. And Jared Adam, who does our theme, our fake Elvis, is fantastic. Matt Hirth was our amazing guest this show. My co-host is Leia Cameron, the person that makes this all possible. My name is Josh Wasta. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Direct conversation, some deep reactions, please. All this comics narration ain't elating me. A little more talk, a lot less read. A little fight, baby, is what I need. Close the trade, open up your brains. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Explain it to me, baby. Explain it to me. Vendillo 2021.